In today's video, we hop back to our NHL Offseason Plan Series. Today, we look at the 15th ranked team from the regular season, the New York Islanders. They made a playoff appearance, but it was brief and didn't have a lot of success. So what are they going to do this offseason? Is Lou Lamoriello finally going to pull the trigger, make some roster moves? We'll discuss what to expect coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we continue on with our NHL Offseason Plan Series, and today we analyze the New York Islanders, who were the 15th ranked team from the NHL. So that's basically league average for all intents and purposes. They were a playoff team, lost out in the first round, which is essentially a lot of times what league average turns out to be. So in case you're new to this series, what we're going to do is we're going to recap the past season, 23-24, look at some key team and individual stats, take a look at changes we saw throughout the season to discuss where this team is going, look at their cap space, expiring contracts, the draft, and then analyze any questions we feel that they need to answer this offseason. So let's first get started with recapping last season. Like I said, they were finishing with a record of 39, 27, and 16. They made the playoffs, but unfortunately did not make it very far, losing in round one to the Carolina Hurricanes. I know we've seen this team with, largely the same group with a few changes, have some deeper runs, but this team certainly, I think it's fair to say, has gotten a bit older. They've slowed down a little bit, and they've made a few tweaks here and there, but for the most part, I think it could stand to have some more injection of youth to get them to the next level. Goals for, they scored 245. Not a great result, 22nd in the league. Goals against, 258 for 18th best. Surprising stat considering how strong defensively and defensive-minded this team has been for quite some time. But again, we did see, obviously a longer period of time now since Barry Trotz has been there. But still, Lane Lambert, who was basically a Trotz disciple for many years and employed much of the same style of play, couldn't keep up those same high defensive metrics. So the power play was respectable, 20.4%, 19th best, and the penalty kill was dead last, 71.5. That's really surprising. This team was actually much better, on an offensive stat like the power play than it was in the penalty kill, which is surprising. Like I said, this team has been built to be defense first. Obviously we've seen some changes, but clearly, things weren't working out, which is why Lane Lambert, I guess, is not there anymore, which we'll discuss here shortly. Individually speaking, we had some good performances. Matthew Barzal led the way with 80 points. Nice season for him. Noah Dobson, again, continued his rise and, rise into more of the prominent offensive-minded D across the league, putting up 70 points. He won't win a Norris Trophy, but I think he'll at the very least get some votes, especially 4th, 5th place votes. He's not at the level of a Makar or Hughes, but He's really, really good, and he's getting better all the time. Took a big step again, 70 points. Certainly going to be a number I think it can go higher, to be honest. I've seen Dobson play since his early days as junior, and he's extremely talented. Brock Nelson had another solid year, 34 goals, 35 assists for 69 points. Bo Horvat had a good year as well, 33 goals, 35 assists for 68 points. Kyle Palmieri also had a 30-goal season, putting up 54 points. So they had, your third, fourth, and fifth highest scorers on the team all hit 30 goals. So, that part was fine. It's the secondary scoring, the drop-off after that, which is the big problem, which is why the overall goals for are just not good enough. Goaltending was good, but not as good as it's been. Varlamov was the better goalie last year. Varlamov had a record of 14-8-4, which is not a lot of games, but he did have a .918 save percentage and a 2.6 goals against, which is pretty solid. Sorokin his numbers weren't horrible, but they were not Sorokin-like. He had a record of 25-19-12, a .909 save percentage, and a .301 goals against. Of course, this team did see some changes throughout the year. Nothing too significant on the roster, but behind the bench, of course, with Lou Lamoriello deciding to dismiss Lane Lambert, and he hired Patrick Waugh. So they get the big high-profile coach comes in. We know Waugh has been an NHL legend, longtime goaltender. He had coached before. It's been a long time since he's been in the league. As a coach, I think he certainly looks like he's mellowed a little bit. He's still fiery, but not to the extent that he was in the past. So he could prove to be a terrific hire here for the Islanders. So Lambert out, while in. Other than that, they added Robert Bortuzzo late in the season. They were having a lot of injuries on the blue line. Bortuzzo was available for a 7th rounder, so they made that trade. And then just recently here, before we get to the full busy part of the offseason, they did a trade with Chicago, trading some draft picks. They traded their first-round pick, which was pick number 18, and their second-round pick number 50, goes to Chicago. And in return, they get Chicago's first-round pick number 20, and 2 second-rounders, pick 54 and 61. So ultimately, they dropped 2 spots back in the first round, but in return, they get an extra pick in the second round. Of course, that both of them are a little bit lower than their original pick, but overall, they come ahead with more picks. Slightly lower, but when you're talking about those parts of the draft, there is not a drastically big difference in terms of quality of player, so it really shouldn't make too big of a difference that way. I think they're going for more of the quantity approach instead of the quality here, because like I said, the quality is negligible in my opinion at those certain parts of the draft. If they are wise and use their picks good, then they will get 3 good players instead of 2. And the cupboards are a little bit bare in Long Island. They could certainly stand to stock them if they're able to do that, which is going to be challenging. Now, going into the offseason, they only have $6.28 million in cap space. They do have 17 contracts on the books as well, so that only leaves 5-6 players to sign. You're looking at just over $1 million a piece. That's not great. Looking at their expiring contracts, they have RFAs in terms of Simon Holmstrom, Ruslan Ishikov, Kyle McLean, and Oliver Wahlstrom. I don't think Wahlstrom will be back. I can see him likely being dealt or possibly not qualified. I think the other 3 have a much better chance. McLean and Holmstrom, I think, will be back for sure. Ishikov, I'm sure they'll put forth an offer. There was some rumblings about him maybe heading back overseas, but I think at this point he would like to stay. I just think he wants more of an opportunity at the NHL, where things go on that front. But at the end of the day, I think 3 out of those 4 guys will at least have a contract of some sorts. On the UFA front, you've got 2 guys that have been on the 4th line, the identity line, for a long time. Cal Clutterbuck, Matt Martin. You've got Sebastian Aho, who's been a depth defenseman for them. Bortuzzo, who came over at the deadline. And other more defensemen too, and Mike Riley and Robin Salo. So hard to say how many of these guys could be returning. I would think it's not going to be much. I would think that Bortuzzo's not back. Riley, I wouldn't think, but I guess depending on what other options he finds and how the team is making out, maybe they bring him back. Robin Salo, difficult to say. I mean, he's been there long enough to hit UFA status and has never gotten a consistent role. I would think probably not. Aho, probably not. Martin and Clutterbuck have a long history with the team. If they're signed, it has to be really short and really cheap. I don't know. I think, honestly, we know Lou Lamoriello and his whole loyalty pitch. Both players have made statements saying they want to continue playing. I don't know that Martin would want to play anywhere else. Can't say that with certainty, but I would think, though, that both players would we have to looking at like a 1-year league minimum. I just can't think they can justify bringing them back at anything further. But we'll see. I'm not even sure they should bring them back, to be honest. I think it might be time to move on. They need to get younger. They need to create roster spots. This is not just about money. This is about playing time and roster spots as well. So we'll see. I think it's time to see a little bit more turnover in the roster, and that might be a start right there. Something you don't even really need to do. Just let them go. 2024 NHL Draft, they only have 6 picks. Of course, they had 5 before the trade with Chicago, so they've got that increased down to number 6. So they're picking at number 20, then 2 in the second round, 54 and 61. So we'll see what they do. It wouldn't be shocking if Lou decides to move that first pick for a player who can come in and have an immediate impact. They can find a top 6 forward or, somebody who can have a big help, but they really could use the prospects too. So I'm not sure. I think I would probably lean more towards getting the prospects, but at the same time, you want to make the team better. That's challenging to do both. Questions facing the franchise in this offseason is, are we finally going to see roster turnover here? Is Lou finally going to, put his hard hat on and get to work. He's talked a lot in the last couple of years about how difficult trades are, but yet we see other teams doing them. I know he's loyal to a fault, but in the past when he was younger, we used to see Lou be shrewd and more like Vegas style, just business first and win at all costs. And now it just seems like as he's getting older, it's more about loyalty. And he's always been about loyalty to some degree, but this has gone on long enough that we need some change with this roster if they're ever going to have hope to move forward. So is Lou finally going to make some moves? I would think with Patrick Waugh in his ear and him wanting to be competitive and win as much as he is, I know Waugh's not going to really have any say per se, but I think he's going to have some influence, and I would hope that'll push things along. Goaltending definitely needs to be more solid next year, but I don't think they need to make any changes. Both Sorokin and Varlamov are under contract for several more years. Sorokin can bounce back. I'm not worried about him. They just need to do the right approach and have him doing the right work to get back on track. But he's still an all-world goaltender to me. I don't think they have any issues there. They could use some more depth on defense for sure. If they do make a trade and bring in another top forward, they may have to move a defenseman, like a Ryan Pulock, for example. Pelech or Pulock, one of those two could be moved, especially with Noah Dobson being the top right-hand defenseman on the team. They could consider a Pulock trade. I mean, he is a good number 2, mind you, but they also have Scott Mayfield. I know he missed a lot last year with injury, finished the year on injury reserve, so I'm not sure exactly what the future holds there, but it wouldn't be shocking if they found a way to maybe move one of their existing D, but then they need to replace them. That's the hard part, right? So you need to subtract from one to help another, but then you create a new problem. So we'll have to see where that goes. But some more depth on defense, no matter how they shake it, they need to be deeper, and that's challenging to say the least. Are we going to see them make a big move? Could they go after one of the top young players that we've heard of being on the market? He's Marty Necas. Patrick Laine is available now. Some people look at him as damaged goods. I know Lou Lamoriello obviously has history with Mitch Marner. We hear a lot about the Leafs player who could be on the move. Would he be interested in going to Long Island? Would the Islanders be interested in having him? I don't know, but there's lots of really high-end offensive players in the forward aspect that are reportedly available for trade. So I gotta wonder if Lou is going to try to strike and bring one of those guys in. Now, of course, Nature's is interdivision, might be challenging. Like I said, Laine, it's kind of also interdivision, but some view him as, with all the issues he's had on and off the ice, what player are they getting, right? It's tough. So we'll have to see. But I think the Islanders need an infusion of youth and offense. And if they can get their hands on one of these top young players that are, out there on the market, then they need to do so for sure. There's also some talk and some sentiment amongst the fan base, and I've seen some reporters bring it up, that maybe it's time for them to move on from Anders Lee. And not only bringing younger players in, but that also means some older players going out. I talked about maybe not signing Clutterbuck and Martin. Maybe those guys aren't back. Maybe you have to move one of your older forwards, even if they're performing, to kind of get some more youth in this roster, get some more speed. They're older, they're slower. We heard a lot about Jean-Gabriel Pageau probably being available. It's a contract that hasn't aged the best. He's still a good player, but I don't know that they really like having him for $5 million a year still. So it wouldn't be shocking if he finds a way to be moved. He's been out there for about a year now in the rumor mill. When it comes to Lee, I know he seems like a really good leader, like a well-respected player within the locker room, does a lot for the community, but he's making $7 million. So when he came off a 40-goal season, when he signed that contract extension, and he's never been a 40-goal scorer ever since. He's been a good player, and with the cap changing over time, $7 million is not horrible for somebody that scores 25, 30, gives you 60, 70 points, but even that is not consistent. So there's been some talk that maybe it's time for change rate in the leadership area and to find some space. But again, he's got a few years left on that deal. That's not going to be easy to do, but it is a name that I've seen kind of put out there for sure. But they need to find a way to score more goals. At the same time, they need to find a way to improve that league worst penalty kill. They trade Pageau. Again, that's going to create an issue. He's one of their top penalty killers, but clearly their top penalty killers haven't been doing a good job if they have the worst penalty kill in the NHL. I mean, some of that could be coaching, some of that could be personnel. So clearly we'll have to see where things go. I mean, it's going to be very interesting here because, like I said, they have a dilemma. They can't trade picks and prospects to bring in a top star because they don't have it, right? But that's what they need. You're trying to shed aging veterans that are still somewhat productive, trying to get some value for value, but then you're creating a new problem, right? So, like, what if you could they realistically get Mitch Marner? I doubt it. I don't think they have the assets. Marty Necas? I don't know, to be honest. Do they have what Carolina's going to want? It's going to be tough. They don't have the few players they have on their team that are on the younger side of it, like your Barzals and your Dobsons. They don't want to trade those guys. Sorokin's a non-starter, so like those are you're going to have to try to move like a Nelson. And Brock Nelson's got 1 year left, still productive, but it also has some trade protection. Going to be challenging for sure. There's no doubt. So again, I expect Lou to hopefully get busy. We will hopefully see some change. Guys like Lee and Pajot, maybe Nelson could all be gone. Maybe some turnover on the D. But again, if those guys go out, then they need to find a way to bring in some youth and some offense. At the same time, bring in some defense. They really need a bit of everything. Goaltending is solid, but the rest of the team kind of needs a bit of everything there and out front, and not going to be easy to do. So can the Islanders make enough moves to become a playoff team next year? Again, with other teams showing improvement, it's going to be really challenging, there's no doubt. But depends on how aggressive they are. A full year of Patrick Waugh, a few new players, it could change the dynamic completely. So we'll have to see. Let me know your thoughts and expectations for the Islanders down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.